actually going to talk briefly, but it will be, Julie, more than a couple of words. I'm going to get 3 at least in there. So listen, thank you for letting me come out here. We had a great day. First of all, I went down to Pella and went to the Dutch Bakery there, did some campaigning in Pella, and then here for an event here that we were able to campaign in. And the key is I was able to get people that would represent me in a caucus. So we've had a good day. So we've added to that list. And then I'll be leaving here in a little bit and going to be on News Nation. Tomorrow I'll be heading to New Hampshire. I was just talking about, I'm going to be on a crypto town hall. So I'll be talking about crypto, I was practicing on some of you earlier. But that's a little bit of my schedule. I'll be in New Hampshire, then I'll be coming back here. And so I wanted to make a couple of points today. One, I want to tell you a Christmas story. And this is a little bit about me, but it tells you a little bit of history, and it tells you a good story about Christmas, I think. And so my wife Susan and I, we were living in Fort Smith. I was the United States Attorney. And while I was the United States Attorney, of course, we had a lot of big high-profile cases, but and there were some threats that went along with that. But there was one particular Christmas that we had an ice storm. And the ice storm came, and it froze our pipes, and it caused Susan and me and our 4 kids to go out and get into a hotel room around Christmas. And Susan remarked at the time, this has really got to be our worst Christmas. Now, fast forward to whenever I had the terrorist group in northwest Arkansas that was combined with the order out in northwest United States, a very violent group with the Posse Comitatus up in North Dakota that had shot and killed a United States Marshal. They fled into Arkansas. They were all in a compound called the CSA, 280 acres. It wound up being an armed standoff. I had a search warrant, arrest warrant for the leader of the group. It was a white supremacist neo-Nazi group. And that's whenever this story about me putting on a bulletproof vest and assisting in the negotiation of the surrender and the prosecution of that group. And so that's where the rest of the story has not been told. As we went into the compound and the hostage rescue team searched the compound, they found a security file in which Richard Wayne Snell, who had shot and killed a Jewish pawn shop owner, had shot and murdered a Trooper Bryant, who was an African-American police officer, and he was, of course, he hadn't been convicted of that yet, he was still loose. And so he was a part of the CSA, and they found a security file in which he was assigned to go and assassinate myself, the federal judge, and the FBI agent investigating the case. That was Richard Wayne Snell. But the only problem was that as he traversed to accomplish that, the same ice storm that stopped us from having a good Christmas was the ice storm that derailed him, and he crashed, and they were never able to carry it out. And so my wife, when she learned all of this, she says, my worst Christmas turned into my best Christmas. And so I tell that story. One, it tells a little bit about my life, but it also talks about how life gives a lot of unusual twists and turns, and somehow you've got to embrace those. You've got to understand the uniqueness of that moment and how there's providential guidance as we go through life. And so you know my background as a federal prosecutor, as someone who was in Congress when we last balanced the budget in this country, as someone who was called by the President of the United States to help protect our border after 9/11, to protect our country from a terrorist attack, and then get elected governor of Arkansas, where we balanced the budget, we lowered taxes, we expanded the private sector, and we shrunk government. And so that's my background, and that leads me into this race for president and here to Iowa. And I'll tell you, I've never enjoyed meeting people more than here in Iowa. the friendliness, the assumption of responsibility that you have to engage in this caucus and to make sure that this presidential campaign season gets off to a good start. And so there's a lot of responsibility here, and I would encourage you in a couple ways as we go into the season right before the caucus. First of all, don't think that just because you're not on the debate stage, the campaign ends. There's some myth about that somehow if you're not on the debate stage, somehow you're not a real candidate. Well, I've got news for you. That's not true. You all know that's true here in Iowa, and I hope that you will follow that through to the caucuses. Now that the RNC has taken off the restraints on the debates, and we're going to have one, it looks like perhaps CNN will have one here, they have a threshold that's only going to be 2 candidates there. Iowa does not need to be restricted to 2 candidates that make the debate stage. It's got to be much broader than that. And so make sure that everyone understands that. And then secondly, there is this idea that somehow you've got to collapse all of the different candidates so that we just have one alternative or one major candidate coming out of Iowa. That has never been the purposes of the caucus. The caucus is to vote your convictions. The caucus is to determine in your own heart who would be the best president of the United States and who can lead our party and who can bring in independence and who can win. To me, that's the fundamental question that you ask. And so I challenge you not to compromise those convictions. Go in and vote for those. And there's going to be some that's going to come up to you and say, hey, your candidate doesn't have a chance, so why don't you go with somebody that's got a better chance that's higher in the polls? That's going to defeat the purpose of the caucus, where you're going to be able to measure the candidates and what their support is without collapsing that support. That's how it is traditionally operated, and I encourage you to follow your conviction when you go in to the caucus on January 15th. And so those are just a couple of points. Obviously, those are to benefit me so that you will follow those convictions and hopefully be able to support me as you go in there. Now, I wanted to end on another historic note, and that is a book that I read by Lynn Olson called Troublesome Young Men. And of course, it can apply to troublesome young women as well. But to me, that's what young Republicans are. And this was a book about those members of Parliament around the time of Winston Churchill, whenever Winston was raising the flag about we got to watch Nazi Germany and Hitler as he rises in his power. And England was asleep, and Winston Churchill was the one that was raising the flag. We've got to provide defense. We need new leadership. Well, he had these backbenchers in Parliament that were the troublesome young men. And they didn't get the glory and the praise of Winston Churchill, but they stood with him, and they were the ones that were out front leading the charge to have new leadership. And Winston Churchill became prime minister. These troublesome young men wound up going and fighting in World War II, some dying, some lost their seats in Parliament. Some had different stories to tell, but they didn't get the glory that Winston Churchill had. And I like that book because, to me, that's what young Republicans are about. You're out there, you're fighting for your convictions, you're seeing what is great for America and the right direction for our country. And so there's nothing wrong with being troublesome young people, young adults, young Republicans. Whenever I was your age, I was fighting a battle in Arkansas to build the Republican Party. And I was in the extreme minority. It was a blue state, and I was troublesome. I was causing a lot of aggravation to the Clinton machine, the Democratic machine in the state. And I remember whenever they set up an ethics commission, and all they gave the Republican Party was one appointment on the ethics commission when the rest are Democrats. I sued and challenged that. And we've had Democrat judges there, and they ruled against me. I took it to the Arkansas Supreme Court, and for the first time in history, I asked for all the judges to recuse themselves because they were partisan, and they did. I had 7 new special justice appointment, and we won the case and reformed the Ethics Commission to make it fair. We had singular primaries in Arkansas where if you were in Arkansas County around Stuttgart, if anybody goes duck hunting, you know that territory. Well, there you had 30 different places you could vote in the Democratic primary, but there was only one place that you could vote in the Republican primary in that county. So the turnout was very low for Republicans, very high for Democrats, and we never could overcome that. We couldn't recruit candidates. It was just an escalating challenge that we had. I filed suit, challenged that as being unconstitutional. I lost it in the lower court. We won it in the 8th Circuit. We reformed the primary system in Arkansas to have joint primaries, and that started the reform in the state that gave Republicans equal footing and access to the ballot. And so it's okay to be a little troublesome. We did that, and we were successful and became the majority party in Arkansas. You all are doing a terrific job here. Thanks for the leadership of the Young Republicans, the hospitality that you give me and my campaign, and I wish you well over the holidays. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas. Thank you.